My name is Sierra Collins, and I'm 34. If you ask my friends, they'd say I'm the kind of woman who color codes her groceries and sends birthday cards with handwritten notes. I write software that keeps energy grids from doing anything dramatic during summer heat waves. I like clean code, clean kitchens, and messy jazz records on Sunday mornings. For almost 3 years, I liked Adrian Park too. He's 31, works in marketing for environmental nonprofits, and can talk for 20 minutes about the lifespan of a city tree, like it's a beloved pet. We met at a community garden volunteer day. Me, there with my company's outreach crew. Him, leading a workshop in a faded field jacket with soil under his nails. He was articulate, principled, cute. We didn't slot into place so much as drift together like magnets that pretend to resist before surrendering. 6 months later, he moved into my apartment. From the beginning, we had an arrangement, our word for it, spoken brightly and often. I earned more. He had student loans and a job that chose purpose over profit. I covered the rent and most bills. He handled groceries, his car, and, his phrase, building an emergency fund for us both. It felt fair. It felt modern. It felt like something we were proud of when our friends asked how we made it work. I kept a folder in my top desk drawer labeled Barcelona. Inside, flight confirmations, a list of tapas bars, and a folded note card where, in a moment of ridiculous romantic optimism, I'd scribbled proposal ideas. I had also bookmarked a ring. Nothing loud, nothing enormous. A stone that caught morning light and threw it back quietly. The day everything turned happened on a Wednesday that began like any other. I worked from my home office, the second bedroom that evolved from storage closet to sanctuary. Noise-canceling headphones, 2 monitors, mug ring on a coaster. Adrian sat in the living room at his laptop for a Zoom with his team. I got up to ask if he still wanted dinner at my parents' this weekend. I remember the way my doorknob felt. Cool, a little loose, under my palm. I stepped into the hallway, halfway between my world and his, and I heard his voice. Not the public one he used on camera. The hushed one we reserve for gossip and confessions. God, I hope she doesn't propose, he whispered. How do you politely reject a woman who pays your rent? The sentence didn't fall, it detonated. Jenna, his coworker, laughed. A light, tinkling thing I'd liked before this second. Just marry her, then divorce later, she said. You get half her stuff. Same. Their laughter was small, but that's the problem with small laughter. It slips under doors. He kept going, not cruelly, just casually, like we were a spreadsheet he was adjusting to make the numbers work. I'm not ready to lock myself down. Not to Sierra. She's kind, but she's so... His voice fuzzed. Someone must have rejoined. Anyway, I heard him say in his work-bright tone, I'll send those campaign drafts by end of day. I stood there rooted in the hallway, my heart beating like a hummingbird trapped in glass. I didn't stomp out. I didn't make a scene. I didn't even clear my throat. Instead, I did the thing I do best. I went quiet. Silence is misread as peace. It isn't. It's strategy. I backed into my office and shut the door with the kind of care you save for sleeping babies and bomb wires. I stared at my monitors until the code bled into white noise. 3 years began reformatting themselves in my mind. The way his affection pulsed right after I covered some big expense. The soft pivot he'd make when I asked about our future. Can we table that until after the campaign launch? The way his friends became my friends, but my friends stayed mine. The night he suggested we put him as an authorized user on 2 of my credit cards, for emergencies and household stuff, babe. And I said yes, because trust, in my experience, is built with 1,000 small yeses. Trust, it turns out, is also how you become collateral. We ate dinner like normal. Pasta, a salad with the ends of a cucumber that had seen better days. He told me about some corporate partner named Marcus and whether they'd fund tree corridors by the freeway. I nodded. I even laughed at the part about his coworker forgetting to mute during a background rant. He had forgotten too. When he reached across the table and squeezed my hand, I noticed his nails again. No soil now. Clean. A detail that shouldn't matter, but does, because it's how the mind tries to re-enter the body when it's busy leaving. In bed, I stared at the ceiling and counted the tiny hairline cracks I'd never noticed. I thought about the Barcelona folder, about the ring tab still open on my phone, about the sticky note on my monitor that read, Call Jeweler. I imagined sliding a ring onto a finger that would one day tap a calculator while talking to a friend about how to politely refuse me. At 2:13 a.m., I slipped out of bed and went to my office. I opened a new doc and typed a grocery list that wasn't a grocery list. What to cancel, what to change, what to move. Landlord, utilities, bank, cards, parent dinner, cancel, friend couch, ask, spare key, collect. I stared at his name on my credit card portal, a friendly little line of text that meant convenience when I added it and meant something else entirely now. I didn't remove him yet, not tonight. The practical part of me wanted a clean cut that didn't bleed through the carpet. The morning came thin and gray. I canceled dinner with my parents. Work thing, can we reschedule? And listened to my mother's disappointment smear across the line before she masked it. I took a work call. I fixed a gnarly bug that had been getting on my nerves for a week. I said no worries 6 times and meant none of it. Around noon, I opened the drawer with the Barcelona folder. The note card that read proposal ideas looked juvenile, like a diary entry someone else wrote in a handwriting that copied mine. I set the folder on my lap and pressed my palms to it as if I could warm the paper back into meaning. When Adrian walked into my office doorframe at 5, he leaned there like he always did. Casual, sweet. He kissed the air and asked if I wanted to try that new Thai place or just cook. Let's cook, I said. My voice sounded like it had been washed and wrung dry. We sautéed garlic. We argued about how much fish sauce is too much fish sauce. He danced a little with the spatula, and I watched him like you watch a video you loved once and now can't remember why. We ate. We watched a show. We pretended the day was normal, because the thing about normal is that you don't notice when it's ending. It ends quietly, right under your nose, without final music. In the bathroom, brushing my teeth, I caught my reflection and nearly laughed. I looked exactly like a woman who might propose in Barcelona. I turned off the light. In the dark, I kept seeing the Zoom window in my mind, the little microphone icon, red when muted, trusting when it isn't. I kept hearing Jenna's laugh, the kind you can't unhear even when you forgive it. I kept hearing his whisper, "How do you politely reject a woman who pays your rent?" As if kindness were a commodity and I were a market to time. I lay there. I didn't cry. I didn't sleep. I made a plan. By sunrise, the list was neat, the order clear, the exit precise. I would not throw plates or words. I would not stage a scene he could show to friends and say, "See, she was crazy." I would leave him exactly what he had given me, an arrangement, only this time written by me. Outside, the city shifted into morning. A bus sighed. Somewhere, a neighbor laughed over a video. On my desk, the Barcelona folder sat like a sealed envelope I no longer needed to open. I put it back in the drawer, then I closed the drawer softly, the way you close something when you plan to never open it again. The morning after the mute that wasn't, I woke before dawn, the kind of hour that doesn't belong to anyone yet. Adrian was still asleep, one arm sprawled across my side of the bed like a claim marker. I watched his chest rise and fall, then eased out from under it as quietly as I could. I've learned that people who betray you can look impossibly peaceful while you suffocate beside them. I brewed coffee I didn't drink. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up everything that tethered our lives together. Banks, cards, utilities, subscriptions. My name, his name, our name, woven everywhere like ivy through brick. By 6:40, I had a plan that looked less like heartbreak and more like a systems migration. First, cancel dinner with my parents. I texted Mom, "Hey, work crisis. Can we push dinner to next weekend?" Her reply came fast. "Of course, sweetheart. Bring Adrian if he's free." I stared at the blinking cursor and felt my throat close around the irony. Next, I called the bank. My voice was calm, professional. "Yes, I need to remove an authorized user from 2 cards, effective immediately." The agent said, "Sure, Ms. Collins. Would you like replacement cards?" "Yes, expedited delivery, please." She confirmed, and I thanked her like she'd just performed minor surgery on my life. Then utilities. Internet, power, water, each one with a chirpy customer service rep, unaware they were participating in an emotional evacuation. "Reason for update?" one asked. "Personal separation," I said. The words tasted metallic. By 9, Adrian stumbled out, hair wild, wearing my old university sweatshirt, the one that made him look like home. "Babe, you're up early." "Couldn't sleep," I said. "Code release." He kissed my forehead, made a joke about caffeine dependency, and started scrolling through his phone. I wondered if he was texting Jenna. I wondered if she still thought it was funny. I opened our shared budgeting app. His emergency fund line glowed with reassuring numbers. Money he claimed was for us. Now I knew better. It was for later, for his exit. I deleted the app from my phone. That evening, I called Lila, my best friend since college, who'd seen every version of me, from idealistic intern to quiet workaholic. "Hey," she said, hearing something in my silence. "Can I crash at yours for a few days?" "Of course. What happened?" "I'll explain later. Just not tonight." "Bring wine," she said softly. "And your charger. You always forget your charger." That was Lila's gift, making the worst moments sound ordinary enough to survive. At dinner, Adrian was his usual self, charming, easy. He complained about a coworker missing deadlines, asked if I'd booked our hotel for Barcelona. "Almost," I said. "You're the organized one. I'd probably forget my passport if you didn't remind me." He laughed, like that was endearing. I smiled, like I wasn't memorizing how his face looked when he lied without knowing he was caught. We watched a show. He fell asleep halfway through. I muted the TV and stared at the screen's reflection on our coffee table, two people sitting close but galaxies apart. At midnight, I packed. Not a dramatic, sobbing kind of packing. Methodical. Essentials only. Clothes, laptop, passport, birth certificate, the small jewelry box that held the ring he'd never known existed, the one I'd been saving for him. I left the plants, left the photos, left the comforter I bought because he said it felt like hotel sheets. I left everything that belonged to our version of me. Before dawn, I sat at the kitchen counter, staring at the blank sheet of paper where the goodbye would live. I wrote slowly, carefully, like every word was a nail sealing a coffin. "Adrian, I heard your conversation with Jenna on Wednesday, the one where you said you hoped I wouldn't propose, the one where you joked about rejecting a woman who pays your rent. I've removed you from my accounts and canceled your cards. I'll cover rent through the end of next month so you can make arrangements. After that, you're on your own. I deserve to be loved, not managed. Sierra." I folded it once and placed it by the fruit bowl, beside the avocado he never remembers to eat. He texted me the next morning from work. "Did you move my card? It declined at lunch. Some issue?" I didn't reply. By evening, I had 47 missed calls. They started confused, then angry. "What conversation?" "You're overreacting." "Babe, please call me." Then came the spin. "Everyone vents. You took it out of context." "I was just joking." "You can't seriously think I was using you." Then finally fear. "I can't afford this place alone. You know my loans are due." "Be reasonable, Sierra. This isn't fair." That word, fair, snapped something inside me. Fair was covering rent for 3 years while he built a safety net out of my trust. Fair was listening to him preach about equity and compassion while using both like bargaining chips. Fair was me, quietly cleaning up after someone who thought kindness was free labor. I drove to Lila's that night. The city looked different, like someone had turned down the saturation. My hands shook when I parked, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was adrenaline coming down. Lila opened the door in her pajamas, took one look at my face, and didn't ask a single question. She just handed me a glass of wine and pointed to the couch. "Stay as long as you need," she said. "I'll only need a few days." She nodded. "He's going to spiral." Let him. I slept for the first time in 2 nights. Deep, dreamless, almost peaceful. When I woke up, my phone blinked with another dozen missed calls and a string of messages from numbers I didn't recognize. He was borrowing phones now. Each one said some variation of please. But when I scrolled to the first message I'd ever saved from him, the one that started everything, it just said, "You seem like someone who never forgets to water her plants." I smiled at the irony. He was right. I never forget. I just finally learned what's worth watering. By the 3rd day, silence became my favorite sound. I kept my phone on Do Not Disturb, but every few hours, I'd glance at the screen anyway, like pressing a bruise to check if it still hurts. It always did. His messages had evolved into essays. "You misheard me, Sierra." That conversation was taken out of context. "You've got it all wrong." Jenna jokes like that all the time. Then, can we at least talk about logistics? Rent, groceries, bills? I didn't answer. Logistics had been my love language for 3 years. I was done speaking it. Lila's apartment smelled like lavender and old books. I stayed on her couch, surrounded by the soft chaos of her life. Sketches, empty mugs, a half-finished puzzle on the coffee table. It was the first home that didn't ask anything from me. That morning, I opened my laptop to distract myself with work. New emails, code review notes, system updates, all comforting in their mechanical predictability. Then one notification stopped me cold. Message request from Jenna. Her subject line, please read this. I had no idea. I hesitated, then clicked. Hi, Sierra, I feel terrible. I didn't think he was serious that day. It was supposed to be a joke, but he told everyone at work you ghosted him and left him with rent due. I can't stay silent, not after what I found out. Call me if you want context. There was a number attached. I stared at it for a full minute before calling. Jenna? Her voice was trembling. Sierra, thank you for answering. I know this is awkward, but I need you to know what he's been saying at work. I let her talk. She described how Adrian had shown up that morning, devastated, spinning a story where I'd abandoned him out of nowhere. He said you'd been controlling with money, she continued, that you used finances to manipulate him. I almost laughed. The audacity would have been impressive if it weren't so predictable. But then Jenna said something that stopped me. There's more. He's done this before. Before, I repeated. She hesitated. Yeah, one of his exes, Lena. She worked here years ago. Same pattern. Moved in with her, let her pay most bills, said it was temporary until he was financially stable. Then left when he'd saved enough. I felt something tighten in my chest. How do you know that? Jenna exhaled. Because he bragged about how he learned to manage relationships strategically. Said Lena was the reason he keeps a savings spreadsheet now. That way, he never feels trapped again. Spreadsheet? I whispered. Yeah, I saw it once by accident. He joked it was his freedom plan. Names, dates, savings targets. I thought he was being ironic. The line went silent. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. Do you still have her contact info? I asked. I think so. I'll send it to you. 10 minutes later, a message popped up. Lena Tran, freelance designer. I didn't think she'd respond, but when I texted, she replied almost instantly. You're Sierra? I was wondering when you'd find me. We met that afternoon in a cafe near downtown. She was around my age, calm, deliberate, with that look of someone who's rebuilt herself before. She slid her phone across the table. On the screen, an Excel sheet. Adrian Park, long-term planning. Column A, relationship timeline. Column B, projected expenses covered by partner. Column C, personal savings growth. And then, column D, exit window. There it was, my name, Sierra, current. Next to it, a dollar amount, $25,000. I stared at it until the numbers blurred. He updated it every few months, Lena said quietly. When we were together, I thought it was about work projections. But no, it was this. The cafe noise around us faded. Cups clinking, laughter, music, all collapsing into static. I felt my throat close. He tracked how much he was making off us. Yes, her voice was steady. You're not the first, but you can be the last. That night, back at Lila's, I sat in the dark with my laptop open, scrolling through Adrian's social media. Posts about sustainability, mental health, healthy relationships, the curated morality of a man who knew how to sound kind. The comments underneath made me sick. Such a caring soul. An inspiration. He's lucky to have you, Sierra. He'd built a brand on empathy. I'd been his sponsor. I closed the laptop and stared at the wall until the streetlights shifted color. Lila walked in wearing her robe, holding 2 mugs of chamomile tea. She handed me one without a word. I have proof, I said finally. Of what? That he didn't just use me. He planned it. Lila sat down. What are you going to do with it? I don't know yet. She sipped her tea. Then sit with that for a while. Sometimes not reacting is the loudest thing you can do. Her words settled over me like a blanket and a dare. I didn't text him, didn't call, didn't post. But I made a new folder on my desktop. I titled it Mute History. Inside it, I saved the spreadsheet screenshots, the messages from Jenna and Lena, the note I'd left on the kitchen counter, every piece of evidence that I hadn't imagined the betrayal. For the first time, I didn't feel naive. I felt documented. And somewhere deep inside that quiet fury, I felt something else forming. Not revenge, not even closure. A promise. He would never use my silence again. Adrian showed up at my building 3 nights later. Lila saw him first, through the peephole, standing there in the hallway with wilted flowers, his hair messy enough to look authentic. "Sierra, he's here," she whispered. My stomach tightened, but I nodded. "Let him talk." She opened the door halfway, one hand braced on the frame. "Sierra, please," he started, voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed. "You won't answer my calls. I need to explain." I stepped into the doorway, arms crossed, trying not to flinch at how familiar he still looked. "Explain what?" I asked. "The spreadsheet, or the fact that you turned me into a budget line?" He blinked, a microsecond of panic before he rearranged his face into something softer. "Lena showed you that?" "She's bitter, Sierra. She's obsessed. That was an old file, a joke. God, you're letting strangers rewrite our story." "Our story?" I repeated, my voice breaking on a laugh. "You mean your business plan?" He winced. "I know how it looks, but I never meant for it to be like this." He stepped forward. I stepped back. The scent of his cologne, cedar and something citrus, hit me like muscle memory. "You said you loved me," I whispered. "I do." "No," I said, steady now. "You loved my stability. You loved what I made easy." He swallowed. "That's not true." "Then tell me this," I said, pulling out my phone. "Why is my name next to 25,000? He froze. "That's not about money." "Then what is it about?" Silence. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. "You wouldn't understand. I was trying to protect myself. I've been broke before, Sierra. I can't go back there." There it was, the quiet confession that turned love into ledger. "You used me to avoid your own fear," I said, "and you called it partnership." His voice cracked. "I panicked, okay? I felt small next to you. You had everything figured out. I just wanted to feel secure for once." "And you did," I said softly, "at my expense." He dropped the flowers then, petals scattering across the floor like tiny, defeated apologies. "Can we start over?" I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But pity is another kind of debt, and I was finally done paying. "No," I said, "we're finished." He nodded slowly, eyes glassy. "You'll regret this." "I already have," I said. He hesitated, as if waiting for me to break. When I didn't, he gave a short, humorless laugh. "You think this makes you stronger? Walking away doesn't make you right." "No," I said, "but it makes me free." He left then, not slamming the door, just letting it click shut. That soft sound again, the same one from my apartment days ago. A loop closing. Later that night, I found his final text waiting. "You'll miss me when you realize no one else will give like you do." I stared at it for a long time before deleting the thread. He was right about one thing. No one else would, because I wouldn't let them. 2 days later, I stopped by the apartment to check the mail and gather a few remaining things. He'd already moved out most of his clothes. The space looked stripped, but oddly lighter. On the kitchen counter sat a small envelope with my name scrawled across it. Inside was a check, $1,726. His idea of fairness. Beside it, a note in his looping handwriting. "For groceries, since you think everything has a price." I laughed out loud, a sharp surprise sound that echoed against the empty walls. Then I tore the check in half, dropped it into the sink, and turned on the faucet. The paper disintegrated under the running water, like debt finally dissolving. That evening, I went through my finances, calculating the real cost of our relationship. Rent, trips, bills, birthday surprises, dinners, the countless "I'll pay you back later" moments. The total, $64,000. I stared at the number, not in anger anymore, but in disbelief. 3 years of giving, believing it meant love. I opened my budgeting app, the one I'd deleted, and restored it just to make one final entry. Lesson: don't fund someone's comfort while starving your own clarity. Then I closed it for good. He tried again once more, this time a call from a new number. I answered only to end it properly. "Adrian," I said. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for days. "Sierra, please, I can fix this." "No," I said. "You can't fix something that was designed to break the moment I stopped paying for it." "You're cruel," he snapped. "After everything I shared." I cut him off. "You didn't share, you borrowed, and I'm calling in the loan." Then I hung up. I sat in silence afterward, phone face down, heart strangely calm. The world didn't end. It just got quieter. That night, I went for a walk by the river. The air smelled of rain and new beginnings. Clean. Almost too clean. I thought about all the ways people measure love: time, gifts, loyalty, sacrifice. But the truest one, I realized, is attention. If they only see what you give and not who you are, that's not love, it's accounting. I deleted his contact from my phone, blocked every unknown number, and stood there until the city lights shimmered on the water like static stars. When I finally walked back home, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: weightless. And for the first time since that Zoom call, I smiled, not out of relief, but recognition. He'd wanted freedom from me, and I had just given it to both of us. The morning after the last call, I woke to sunlight cutting through the blinds like clean lines of code, neat, decisive, no unread messages, no blocked number voicemails, just quiet. It's strange how peace doesn't arrive like a gift. It creeps in after you've burned everything else down. I made coffee and sat by the window, the same way I used to when Adrian worked late. Except this time, the other mug stayed empty. It didn't feel lonely. It felt accurate. That weekend, I went back to the apartment for the last time. The lease was still in my name until the end of the month, and I wanted closure, the administrative kind, the kind that lives in checklists and signatures. I found a single box waiting by the door, his handwriting on top: your stuff. Inside, a few books, a cardigan, and one small black box I had hidden in the back of my closet. The ring box. The one I'd bought months ago, quietly, on a late-night impulse after we'd talked about Barcelona and futures and maybe someday. I hadn't realized he'd found it. I opened it slowly. The ring caught the light. Delicate, understated, the kind of promise you could mistake for forever. My reflection shimmered in the stone, small and still. I thought about all the time I'd spent saving for it, planning around it, picturing a life that would never have existed. And yet, in some strange way, that tiny circle of metal had saved me. Because if I hadn't been planning a proposal, I never would have overheard that whisper. That was the universe's dark humor. The ring didn't mark the start of something. It marked the end. I slipped the ring back into its box and drove across town to a charity auction I'd read about, a fundraiser for young women in STEM programs. At the registration table, the volunteer smiled politely. "Would you like to make a donation?" "Yes," I said. I handed her the small box. "It's a custom engagement ring, platinum band, certified stone, retail value around $8,000. Her eyes widened. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "Absolutely. Let it fund someone's beginning instead of reminding me of my ending." She smiled softly. "That's beautiful." I laughed. "No, it's practical." When she wrote me a receipt, I noticed her pen was the same brand Adrian used to sign our first lease. Funny how the world loops back on itself. Cleaner this time. A few days later, a message came through from Lena, the ex. "He's left the nonprofit. Word is he's moving cities. Thought you should know." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. "Thanks. He'll probably find another volunteer." "He will," she replied. "But at least we're not the project anymore." We ended the chat there. No need for bitterness. Only relief. That night, I took the Barcelona folder from my desk drawer. Inside, the papers were yellowed slightly from disuse. Flight itineraries, hotel confirmations, a napkin where I'd scribbled proposal ideas. Instead of throwing it away, I turned the napkin into something else. I folded it, one crease, then another, slow and deliberate, until it became a paper crane. I set it on my windowsill, wings slightly uneven, but holding shape. That napkin had once carried the weight of a promise. Now it carried air. It's been 6 weeks since I last saw Adrian. The missed calls stopped after he realized there'd be no response. The noise quieted. The ache did too, slowly. I moved into a smaller apartment downtown. Half the size, twice the light. My name is the only one on the lease. When I pay the rent each month, it feels like a declaration, not a burden. Sometimes I catch myself remembering small things. The way he'd hum while brushing his teeth. The way his hands looked around a coffee mug. But memory is tricky. It forgets the warnings and polishes the mistakes. So I write them down. The facts, not the feelings. Fact, he used me. Fact, I let him because I thought love required generosity without measure. Fact, it doesn't. Last week, I walked past a jewelry store. In the display window, under a soft spotlight, was a ring almost identical to the one I'd donated. A couple stood outside admiring it, laughing, intertwined fingers, the whole cinematic thing. I didn't feel bitterness, just curiosity. Would she wear it forever? Would he mean it when he slid it on her finger? Maybe yes, maybe not. But either way, it wasn't my story anymore. People like to talk about closure as though it's a single door you shut behind you. It's not. It's a hallway. Long, dim, lined with echoes of everything you ignored until you couldn't anymore. You keep walking until you stop checking if the echoes follow. I still think about that first whisper. God, I hope she doesn't propose. He was right to hope that, because I almost did. And if I had, I'd be standing in a different life, smiling beside a man who measured love in rent payments and savings goals. Instead, I'm standing here, on my own balcony, coffee in hand, the city waking beneath me. The paper crane trembles in the breeze, fragile but holding steady. Maybe that's me now. If there's a lesson in all this, it's simple. If someone laughs about using you, believe them. And if you're going to discuss your secret plans to exploit someone, for the love of everything, make sure you're on mute.